let's call the meeting to order at 7:32. Who we missing? We got Eloise.
Yep,
We got MJ. We got everybody?
we do.
Nice.
Your camera's not on.
Really?
Yeah.
It's probably just as well. Good evening. This is Wednesday,
22nd.
September 22nd, meeting of the Community Preservation Act Committee. As a preliminary matter, please note that this meeting is being recorded and some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Anything you decide to screen share on your computer or anything you broadcast will be captured and recorded. This is Tim Wheeler, Chairman of the Community Preservation Act Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members are present. Carolyn, are you present?
I am.
And Elaine?
Yes.
MJ?
Present, but not all here.
Eloise? She sometimes has trouble with her.
Right. Hold on. So she
bailed on us.
No.
She'll be back. Julie?
Yes.
James? Eloise?
Yes.
Here. All
There
right.
she is.
With the quorum of the committee present, I will call the meeting to order at, well, I already called it to order. The open meeting of the Community Preservation Act is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. Specific information and guidelines for the remote participation by members of the public can be found on the Town of Berlin website. The governor's order suspends the requirement for open meeting law to have all meetings held in a publicly accessible physical location and allows and encourages us to participate remotely. And for this meeting, we're using the Zoom platform as posted on the agenda. Please speak clearly so accurate minutes can be recorded. All right, that's done. Minutes from the last meeting, did we see? No, okay,
Nope.
so we don't have to worry about those. Let's talk. What we have right now are four pre-applications.
Yes.
Five. Right.
We have five?
Wait, two.
Elaine had two, Julie had one, and I had one.
Yeah,
Four.
and baseball submitted one today.
Who did?
So that's five. Baseball?
Did you know, did you see it?
I did. I mean, yeah, I saw it, but it was emailed. Did you not get it?
No.
Oh, really? Okay.
Did anyone get any from?
Well, I know there's a hard copy in your mailbox because I dropped it off, or the hard copy in, but I can probably, I don't know if you want me to send it to you guys.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do that. I don't know why you didn't get that.
Did they send it to the preservation website, the email address?
That's what I was told. Yep.
Because I've been getting the others through that site.
I know that's true.
Do you know what time they sent it?
Let me message them and see.
Let me go into that.
Yep.
Thank you, James.
All right. I'm just gonna change this and edit. Choose. All right, I just sent it to you guys because I had it sent to me also. And I'm just waiting to hear from them. Yeah, so sorry. All right.
So I just got it.
Okay, okay. I mean, it's a straightforward one.
I
Okay, yeah.
haven't. Julie, did you add me to that email?
I'm sorry, Eloise, let me check. See, I'm not wearing my glasses. This is never good. Yeah. Yep, you're on there.
As town clerk or personally?
Oh gee, let me see.
It looks like personally.
Oh,
Okay.
at Gmail.
Well, I'm at work. Could you send it to
Okay,
town clerk at townofberlin.com? Thank you.
Okay. You got it. All right, town clerk. There you are. You're my fourth one down. All right. I think everyone else is in there, right? James, Eloise, Golden Scott.
Do I have to get out of this so that the email will come up? Okay.
Okay, so that's for 20,000.
Correct, yep, I believe, yep. That's what I have. Need my glasses. Jesus, I can't see.
So I guess I'd like to have some general discussion about process and when I was poking around this afternoon, I began to
Here it
feel
is.
uneasy about the process a little bit. And so I started going through the Community Preservation Coalition's website and found that building a better CPA application process, which I sent around to folks. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that, but there are a couple things that it talks about, which, you know, the basics of a CPA application include submission guidelines, contact information, amount of CPA funding requested, project description, identification of CPA categories. And that's all in our application as opposed to the pre-app. But if we're putting articles on the warrant for a special town meeting that's going to occur in 7 weeks, and we have to have the articles for the warrant for next Monday, how confident will we be that the projects can be fleshed out appropriately in that 7-week period, and that we're going to go to town meeting with, you know, strength behind us in terms of the presentations that would have to be made. So that's the question, I guess. I'd like to banter that around a little bit and see where we all stand. Are we all comfortable? And if we are, with putting 5 warrant articles on the special town meeting for, I mean, the other thing we'll have to do is determine the amounts that are actually available and what we'd actually be able to recommend. You know,
Right.
one of the things that this special circumstances sometime arise that make it unfeasible to adhere to the application deadlines, and for example, a priority open space property unexpectedly comes on the market, or a historic resource requires immediate attention. Many communities have created exceptions for those special circumstances. And that's certainly what we did. We've got language that says, here are our deadlines. And of course, the deadline for a special town meeting would be way back in June. And obviously, given the fact we didn't finish the plan and the application process till recently, no one was going to be able to meet that deadline. But there are monies available, and we are having a special town meeting, so people have come forward with applications. And so I think the committee needs to decide whether that special requirement, special circumstance are met by these applications, all 5, or is there 1 or 2, or, and because going forward, we're going to have to live with some of these decisions. We want to make sure we set precedent that, we can follow and feel comfortable with as we move down the line. So if people have thoughts, I'd be interested in hearing what folks think.
I think that's a really good point. I think this was a really unique situation because we didn't have this nailed down, the plan, we didn't have the process nailed down. So I think moving forward, we're not going to run into, I don't think we're probably going to see this again 7 weeks before 5 applications, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because now we're sort of, the ball's rolling with this. I think having a deadline for applications is a really good idea, but I think because of where we were, we couldn't allow for that. So I'm not so sure that, I don't know that we need to have any special circumstances here, because I don't even know if we were in a situation that we even needed to target that language because we didn't have the plan or the dates. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I think this is a total exception. I sort of feel like during this COVID time, everything is such an exception, but this just falls in line with that.
Other thoughts?
So I guess I would look at all 5 of these applications as pre-applications. And even if for, at the initial conversation about each one, we kind of suspend the deadline mentally and see if there wasn't the deadline of Monday,
Mhm.
how would we treat each of these applications?
Yeah.
I'm just very briefly trying to listen and look through this one for the baseball. I think it's a great project, but where did the dollar amounts come from? Is somebody estimating $20,000 or $25,000? Have plans been drawn up? Which I think is what the pre-application process is about, is kind of looking at what somebody wants to do and saying, okay, well, we'd like to see X, Y, and Z before we would feel comfortable going forward with the regular application.
So I guess I'm confused. I thought that's what the application process was, to provide all of that. I thought the pre-app is for us to vet, does it meet the requirements? And if it does,
Oh,
then we submit, you have the green light. And I've read this
right.
over
No, and I think you might,
time.
I think you might be right. So then I guess maybe we don't suspend the deadline, because I'm
What you're saying.
you know what I'm saying?
I do. Mhm. Yep. So maybe we
Your
need some
thoughts?
clarity there.
Right. Good.
Anybody else want to chime in?
I'm less concerned with setting precedent in terms of we've looked at things where we didn't before whatever deadlines, but I think where this is our first year, we are coming up with deadlines with the special town meeting, and it seems like were we to, give the thumbs up to all of these, that the overall dollar amounts compared to what
Yeah.
we have available is, seems to become significant, that we may run into an issue where, maybe these are all good, maybe the applications all go well, we're all happy with it, but then if we show up to, town meeting with 5 things, all this money all at once, all at the beginning, all with a very short time frame, that you may see some of it judged, that people might look at a little more negatively than they might otherwise, just because it's a lot coming at once.
Elaine or James, any thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't expect all the money to be asked for at once. And I wouldn't think we'd want to do that. I mean, there's always the bonding option, if you want to commit to things. So there's a lot more to think about.
Yeah, in talking to
I mean,
Hudson,
that's a huge commitment.
yeah, in the case of Hudson, they went 13 years before they ever borrowed against the revenue stream that they expected. They didn't bond anything until this last year, which was a big beach restoration project as part of their rec program. So, and in talking to some other communities, there's been hesitance to bond. And in Hudson's case, I think I've mentioned this before, they don't expend money that's estimated. They expend, theoretically anyway, money that's already in hand from they're sort of a year behind the process. So they sort of delay and gather that funding before they commit it. Eloise, are you thinking about this in any particular way? We like your insight. She's gone again.
I do.
She's muted.
So I guess procedurally, one thing, one precedent-setting thing that we might want to think about is,
I got muted.
oh, go ahead, Eloise. I can,
I like Hudson's idea because the money in hand is better than the promise of money. I would hate to promise something and it didn't come in. And since this is new, we are a wealthy town. I was hoping that we would see cost estimates. Not,
Now, in all fairness, of course, the pre-app doesn't call for the cost estimates. It's part of the application. But in our case, in these situations, let's
they're
say
one and the
that
same.
if we, but the pre-app just says, come and see us and we'll tell you whether you'd even qualify. And I think that's what Julie was saying. And then if you do qualify, then you can proceed to that next step where you really begin to bring together all the backup data, the cost estimates, bids from vendors and that sort of thing. And then that's vetted. And then the committee with that information makes a recommendation to place an article on the warrant. In our case, we're looking at pre-apps, trying to decide whether we can place an application on a warrant with the notion that in the next short order, we're going to get the backup information that we need to make the final recommendation to town meeting. So you could look at this in a way like the pre-app is going to allow us to determine whether we want to put something on the warrant, but the committee will probably have to meet several times before town meeting, and some of those will finally decide as to whether we want to recommend the article for approval. And if we don't recommend it, then it just gets passed over.
Yeah.
If the warrant's been printed. If the warrant hasn't been printed yet, we can just ask that it be pulled. Because ultimately town meeting can't act unless we recommend. And if they do act, of course, as you recall, they've got several options.
Yeah, in whole, in part, whatever. It's just, I would hate to see something on the warrant and then we don't recommend it. I think that would send a negative message if they wanted to bring it back the next year.
What's your, normally, Eloise, for if the special town meeting is going to be November
8th,
8th, the warrant's going to get printed by what date?
well, it has to be out 14 days to the voter. So
So
now
that's
you're,
down to the 25th or so of October.
I don't know what else is on for the,
Hmm.
They're not just doing this special town meeting for CPA,
well, that's what it was implied to me.
really?
Yeah,
Really?
it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that I did ask. I sort of have a vested interest in where I am November 8th. And
Right.
then we have to have a open voter registration.
I thought that was
November
something really
8th,
important.
2 weeks. It'd have to be in the voters' hands by the 25th.
25th, yep.
And if we,
You have to
so we
allow
assume it
time for
goes-
it to be printed.
it's,
It has to, usually it goes to town council before it goes for the select board signature.
so that, but if the selectmen didn't, if the selectmen acted on the final approval of the warrant on the 12th, based on town council and everything, it could go to the printer that week and theoretically be back the next week for mailing by the
Correct.
25th, right?
Yeah.
And that means the 12th is 3 weeks away, right?
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
committee would have to be confident
It has
that
to be something.
that an application was robust enough to weather a storm at town meeting.
Yep.
Because town meeting can approve, they can reject, they can reduce the amount, or they can reserve the amount recommended by CPAC to the applicable reserve account rather than approving the project. So there's really 4 results that could come from going to town meeting with any of these.
Yeah.
There has to be
James,
something
you're
else on the
quiet.
warrant.
I think with the deadline question, I think this year we need to be a little flexible because it seems like, judging by the late number of applicants, that people are kind of still finding out about it. But in future years, we have to have some sort of hard deadline. But just judging by what's coming in at the last minute, it seems like people are just figuring stuff all out. But I don't know how that affects your warrants and everything else. But I think this year we should be a little flexible, and then for the next couple of years, we got to have a really hard deadline to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Mhm.
There has to be something else on the warrant, don't you think? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not
but I'm
just
not
us.
privy to it.
I would hope there is.
Well, we could go back and look at select board meetings. I mean, they discuss these things in open meeting.
Yeah. So shall we go through these and to begin with, at least determine whether we think they're they meet the requirement of being eligible? Go ahead. What were you going to say, Carolyn?
Yeah, so I was starting to say before, and maybe we don't have the answer to this right now, but we should probably decide if we will be willing to recommend to town meeting a total dollar value over what we have. And let town meeting sort out who gets. You know what I'm saying?
No,
No, say
No,
that again.
I don't either.
So right now, if we were to recommend all 5 of these projects, the
Mhm,
amount of money that is asked for is more money than we have.
mhm.
That would be foolish.
Well, we couldn't do
Yeah, we
that.
can't. Yeah,
We can't recommend that a project be put to the town meeting vote and let the town meeting decide where the funds are going to be allocated based on the overlap. We have to,
Okay, right.
live within our budget.
Okay, that's, I
That's
just
the way I
wasn't
interpret it.
clear exactly where that line was. Okay,
mhm.
Is that the way other people
I
feel?
assumed,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was true, but
Yeah,
Can
I
we-
think
sure.
Can we
if we
let a-
determine that a project is eligible, and then we look at what the dollar request is, then to me, the question is the dollar amount available within the funds that we know we have access to? And, you know,
Tim, could you list out the 5?
so the 5 are the Berlin Youth Baseball for $20,000.
Yeah.
The historical
25.
20 is
Oh,
what they're asking us for.
Yep,
The dollar project is 25, but they only want 20 from us.
That falls under
Uh-huh.
rec, correct? The
Right,
Berlin
James,
baseball is
can you get closer to your microphone or do something?
Berlin baseball falls under rec, correct?
Right. The historical commission has requested 100,000 for the Bullard House. The historical commission has requested 5,000 for a project that would,
That was scanning.
yeah.
Yeah.
And historical documents.
Digital imaging of the inventory notebooks as well as the high priority artifacts listed therein is necessary. And then 100,000 for rec for
I think
the courts, the tennis court and basketball court with the pickleball. And then 490,000 for conservation
Right.
for the acquisition of land at the corner of Linden and Lyman. If I look at June's notes to us.
Yeah.
The amount of money was voted at town meeting, right? Because it's those articles that dictate what's available. June put some money in the year before into the special accounts. And then we put the 48,000 in addition last year. Well, this year at the annual town meeting. So that's where I think you get the 77,483 that's in the 3 different accounts. It's the 48 that we put in plus the money that June had from 2020 that she put into those accounts.
I believe that it's 125 total for the 2 years. If you look at those 2 lines, what the first one, I'm trying to find the email, but the first one is fiscal year 2020. And the
Yep.
second one is fiscal year 2021.
No, that says FY 22.
All right, so it's.
That's what I don't
Yes,
understand.
because this is FY 22.
Right.
So it was, yes. So it's 21 and 22, but there's 2
Yep.
years and they total 125,000.
Yep.
Can't
Okay.
I find that?
And
Oh, it's got, oh, wait. Okay. Okay.
fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021.
Mhm.
The fund balance in the Community Preservation Act was 528,000. And the
Mhm.
fund balance for the Reserve Community Housing, Historic Preservation, Open Space was 77. Are you, when you come up with the 125, is that looking at the money from 2022 that's estimated?
No, I'm looking at the screenshot of the spreadsheet that she sent.
Right,
And so it says actual 6/30/2021. And then actual FY 2022. And
and 2022 is where we are right now with estimated funding coming from the state and anticipated revenue from the fees.
Is that the money coming for town meeting, not special town meeting, right?
right, so yeah, where it says actual, I assume that's not estimated. And
Her report, her CP2 report to the state
Yeah.
for fiscal year 2021 is the one I'm using to say that there's 77,000 in each of those three accounts at the end of 21 fiscal year, and 528, 723 available in the fund balance. Now,
right,
we can determine from, well, June's course away right now. And so she sent that note to Elaine earlier today. But she didn't feel confident about generating final figures for a little while longer.
right,
Which puts us in a little awkward position, but you know, I am comfortable with the figures that she sent to the state for the end of June 2021. And I know that we've got estimated revenues for this coming year, which are pretty significant, but I don't know how. I think we have to be more cautious about those perhaps. And I think
Right.
those may be included in the figure that you're using for the 125. Because that would be another 50,000 added to what the figure she sent to the state, which would be the approximate amount that we would have estimated for each of the designated accounts for 2022.
so you
Right.
think that's where that comes from?
I think so. I mean, I think,
So the 77 is the first 2 years,
Yeah,
because the first year didn't include any state
any
match.
match, right?
that's
So it
right.
was just the 300,000 that we had, or 280,000 or whatever. So if that was the figure, 10% would have been another 28,000 on top of the 48, which could give you somewhere around 77. So
Right,
that's where I
So-
think that number
okay.
comes from. And I think there
Yeah.
is 50,000 that's been added to each of those accounts by our town meeting act that we presented, where we took estimated earnings from 2022
got it.
and assigned those to those accounts. So I think she's reporting what's really available
Mhm.
in this report to the state, the CP2, and then we've got an estimate of this additional money, and I'm confident it's there. And we know from what we've heard from the state is that, you know, where we were a 68% match last year, we're probably going to be a 75% match this year, and we may be closer to 400 and, well, you know, I think we may be $400,000 instead of what, 290 or whatever it was.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's additional revenue coming from both the town and the state, because the state's jumping its formula as well. So,
And
come-
it's been a banner year.
yeah, so
Right.
you know, I really feel comfortable about what we can do in May at the annual town meeting, with
Mhm.
applications for a number of projects. And, you know, part of me looks at this list and says, some of these might very well be fleshed out far better between now and December 1st. You know, put together and put on a warrant in February for the annual town meeting with some real keen idea as to exactly how much money is available, and the ability to fund all these without any trouble at all. And that's why as the day went on today, I became a little more hesitant to say, okay, let's put all 5 of these on the warrant, or all 4 at that time. Just because I didn't, like MJ said, want to go to town meeting and say, oh, well, you know, we thought we were ready, but we're not on this one. And this one doesn't have any documentation to back up the figures. And, you know, so we're going to pull this one. And
Well, I think even if we felt we were ready and they were all good and we all liked it and everything was as perfect as it could be, that's just, we're in a conservative town in terms of spending money, and there was enough people who didn't want the CPA to begin with, that I think, you know, how they're going to react when we first start talking about how we spend the money, that, you know, the psychology of how that plays out should be taken into account. And
yeah.
I think we're maybe
So
run
then,
into a little more.
Tim, are you saying, so I'm just trying to, are you saying you would rather stay? Are you saying that the 761 includes the estimated amounts?
The 761 includes this, is
Mhm.
77,000 for each of the uses, and the balance reserve account of 528.
So you're comfortable saying that we currently have cash on hand, not estimated 761?
Yeah,
Okay. I just want to
think-
make sure we're all working with the same number.
I'm very comfortable with that number.
Okay.
And I believe there's significant additional funds. But, you know, as we talked about earlier, these are funds we actually know. Like Hudson would say, these are funds we have. We know these. If we expend these, we're not using estimated funds, which again, we're very confident about. But, you know, I think working within the parameter of the 761, you know, you can go to town meeting and say, these funds are there. We allocated them. They've been put into these accounts, and expending them is appropriate, you know.
Right.
But
I agree.
I do feel we, in the course of 7 weeks, you've got to be able to say, here's the bid from, you know, vendors. And the other thing is that if we put a project out for bid, if any of these different committees put a project out for bid, how many bids do you have to get? You've got to
Yeah.
deal with prevailing wage and all that sort of stuff. Are we really going to get, I mean, how many bids do you need? You're supposed to get 3. You know,
Right.
I'm not, Eloise may have more of an idea of how the bidding process goes, but
It depends on the amount of, if it's under, I think it's 25,000, they expect you to use good business practices. It's always better if you have 3 bids,
Okay.
but it also depends on the nature of what you're purchasing.
so if you were to put a notice in the newspaper that you were looking for bids, and you had to leave that notice open for 2 weeks, I mean, if you put it in the newspaper and say, by such and such a date, we need bids on the work at the basketball court, and then you in 2 weeks, you get those bids.
Well,
then you-
it depends on the volume of the money that you're planning to spend.
Well, we're talking $100,000.
Yeah, but I don't
I think
know
it's over
what
50.
it has, something sometimes after a higher amount, it has to go into the register. And I think that takes 2 or 3 weeks.
And that's,
That's on a state thing.
right.
Yeah, I think the amount is $10,000. Anything under $10,000, you can go directly to a vendor, that is capable of doing the job.
Yep.
And getting a quote from them. But you
You
have
just have-
to,
Excuse me.
I thought, we just went through the bid process. We've done a couple of different things. And, one was under $10,000 and, we had to have the selectmen's approval on that because they're holding the funds left over. And so we're trying to, work within those parameters and that amount of money. And there's going to be some still work done. And we did have to go out to bids on that because we've already got quotes for all of the work, and estimates for all of the work that needs to be done in compartments. And so we knew we had to go out to bid for that. And you have to send it to at least 3 contractors and advertise it. So, and then it's a matter of how many you get. And we had one that was way off the charts and one that came in within a few $1,000s of our original estimate of the cost. So,
And how long did that process take?
not long at all. Once you send it out.
Yeah.
I think there are rolling deadlines, at least with it, with the state, as to when you can advertise these things. I'm not exactly sure. We let Margaret handle all of that, and we let her work with the contractor to work out the dates because we didn't want to set a deadline that was ridiculous.
Right.
So like I say, she's working out the details with the contractor, but she has a few things on her plate, like this town meeting and a few other things coming up right now. So
And she's scheduled only for us, huh?
yeah, but the timber, the fill work is going to start anytime.
Yeah.
How much did that finally come in at?
19 and change.
Yeah, okay.
But the money I put in for hours is based on we had that study done at the Bullard House.
Yep.
And most of his stuff has been right on the dot, even with all the increases with COVID, because we're dealing with different types of materials.
Okay, so do we want to spend a little bit of time looking at each project and determine whether we feel they're eligible? Should we start with Elaine, because she's just explained that she's gone through some of this process and she's pretty comfortable with the 100,000 figure.
Yep.
Sure.
I mean, that could wait for spring town meeting.
Oh, right.
I don't know how long it takes for things to get approved after that. I mean, because we haven't been through this before.
So what would happen is in December, this application would come to the committee again. We'd look at it. And I think, I mean, to me, it's fairly clear that it's eligible. And I think we can talk about that and agree or disagree. And then, but that means that by December 1st that you're going to come in with this application. It gives you the time to flesh it out, fill out the final application, and be in a position where May 8th or whatever, 4th or whatever the town meeting is going to be, that money gets approved. And we know by then we'll even have some additional money over the 77. So, to me, if we've got 125, then historical can pull all the money it needs for both these projects right out of that existing account that you've got set aside for the projects that you want to work on.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that, I don't know where I read that. I don't think it's in our language, but the money becomes available. It was in fairly short order, it seemed to me. So I mean, you
Yeah, I think
begin to deal with, expend it in June or something.
If you
I-
look at,
I,
Go ahead,
excuse me,
Eloise.
if you look at your warrant from last year, the first article 1 through, I think, 5, that took care of the current fiscal year. Usually the warrant is for the next year, but because they spelled it out that it was for that particular fiscal year that they were already in, as soon as town meeting closed, I was able to certify the amounts and then they could be spent immediately.
Huh.
So you
ah,
don't have to wait for town meeting to be certified in order to expend the funds?
No, 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 you have the town meeting. It's just if you look at the warrant, the first 4 or 5 articles were for last fiscal year.
Mhm.
And that's, they were identified as the current fiscal year 2021, ending June 30, 2021. And then when those 5 or 6 were done, then you went into fiscal year 22. And those monies can't start to be spent till July 1.
Okay,
But because they were on the warrant, once the whole warrant is closed, that means you can't go back and ask for reconsideration of any articles. Then I have to certify every penny spent, but they could spend theirs between the annual town meeting and June 30th.
hmm,
Did I make myself clear?
that's very helpful,
yeah,
because that gives us some alternative in terms of making funds available quicker than one might have expected at that town meeting, if we
The
put the
only
language
problem,
in the warrant article correctly. Yeah.
the only problem I have is that June, the one that June Miller submitted is a little more urgent.
Well, that's what I was going to look at next. And so that's 5,000 for these digitizing, really, right?
Yes,
Long overdue.
Way
Yes.
overdue.
hmm,
Um, So digital imaging of an inventory of the inventory notebooks as well as the high priority artifacts listed therein is necessary to preserve the information that our town collection. And you're confident, I mean, this is something that's going to take more than $5,000 over the course of time. This is something that might be recurring and you'd be asking for this on a sustained basis then.
Well, we'd be looking for other, we're gonna work like mad to get as many grants as we can,
Yeah.
looking at all that this winter. But we really have to get it started. One of the journals is not in great condition. And if we lose that information,
Right. Well,
and we'll be photographing the articles to match the journals also.
James and I were talking earlier and he was, referring to the town clerk's records and the whole notion of, if you're in a position where you lose those, you're really in a difficult position, and the historical commission's in the same boat.
Right.
So,
Right. And we have some wonderful things, and it's getting more as we're aging out and no younger people are coming forward, which I've been beating the bush for younger people to come on board. Either through the historical society or the commission. But we're, people aren't going to know what's there.
well,
And
as we've said,
what's the whole point of? I'm sorry.
as we've said with rec and housing, the availability of funds for any of these projects hopefully will bring some people to the fore and want to get them to participate more. So
Right.
it may very well be that this, profiling some of these at town meeting is going to get people to say, oh, wow, they can get some
Yeah.
stuff done. So.
Well,
Okay,
I think
so-
everybody's all excited about applying for the Smithsonian exhibit.
Yeah.
I think there's a big push in town for that, and there are a lot of deadlines for that.
Yeah, because that's going to be in the end of this week.
what's the Smithsonian exhibit?
So the Smithsonian has a traveling exhibit called Crossroads, where they prepackage a lot of the exhibit, but then they bring it to a small rural town. They've got to be less than 12,000 people. And then the town serves as a host. And in Massachusetts, there's going to be 6 communities chosen to host one of these exhibits. And Berlin has applied with the help of Central Mass. So the Historical Commission and then the Cultural Council with MJ and 19 Carter. Who else was there at that meeting?
Library
Yeah.
trustees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
library trustees, yeah.
Yeah.
So this
And the
collection.
lady
of
from
folks-
Central Mass,
Yeah, Trish from Central
sorry.
Mass. So this collection of folks has come together and put together an application. Peg has been finalizing some of the language and she's working with Trish now to clean that up. But
Right,
the
and
application has to be in by the end of this week. The decision will be made probably by the middle of October as to what the 6 towns will be. And then, and you specify a 6-week period sometime in 2022 and even in 2023. I think it's extended out quite a ways.
Yeah, I think the dates ran through September of 2022 through June 2023.
Yeah.
Like 8-week block.
So the notion would be that what was discussed was the possibility of working, applying as an individual town, but if we would receive the grant, you get $10,000, but you've got to match it with another 10. But that can be in kind, volunteer efforts and that sort of thing. So it would be fairly easy, I think, for Berlin to accomplish that. But we thought a lot of the discussion centered around the possibility of getting Lancaster and Bolton, because they were our mother towns, to participate as well, because one of the requirements is that you host 6 public forums, essentially. And those can be on a number of topics, but we thought, maybe Lancaster would do one, Bolton could do one, we could do, 3 or 4. And we looked at you have to have a certain amount of space, 750 square feet. So, the town hall could serve as that space. And then you end up holding this exhibit for a 6-week period sometime down the road with some help from what it isn't Mass Historic, it's
Mass Humanities, I think.
Mass Humanities, yeah. So
yeah,
that's
the
what-
lady from Central,
go ahead, Trish, yeah.
yeah, she seemed to think that we stood a good chance of getting it.
Well, there's no one else in Central Mass's region that was going to apply, which is, that knocks off 40 towns right there. And of course, there's a substantial number of communities within the state that are far larger than 12,000. So they're eliminated. And, it begins to look like if they wanted to spread it geographically across the state, we might very well stand a very good chance. So it'd be kind of fun.
That's
Bring people
awesome.
together, yeah.
It's very exciting.
But again, that, like Elaine's saying, that's gonna take some attention and but it's also gonna give people a focus, and I think you might get a lot of community participation that might generate interest in some of these other historic commission projects down the road. So that's really good. So I think we're saying that both of these clearly would be eligible, and I think, Elaine, what you're saying is that holding off on the 100,000 isn't going to jeopardize anything necessarily, because you've got the work that you're going to commence right now on the other foundation stuff. And then, but the 5,000 is a higher priority, and perhaps we should think about seriously putting that on the warrant for this.
Yeah, we could get our feet wet with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that notion. All right, and then the 20,000 for baseball. Julie Lee, what do you know?
I know that the program is thriving more than it has been in the past. I know that the program is zero money. What they're looking to do is they want to put an announcer sort of booth, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with that baseball field down there, but it's on the backdrop of the fence. Other towns have it, and the advantage to having it is, aside from the fact that it's awesome for a little kid to hear their name announced over a loudspeaker, go out to the field, you can bring in a lot of when it comes time for playoffs and tournaments, with that coupled with the scoreboard that they're proposing, I think for the 20 grand, right? That's on there. You can have more games at your fields. So which in turn is just going to generate more income for the program that's already a very small program. That's what I know. I can answer any other questions if you have any, but I don't know if I know all the answers.
A 2012 amendment to the CPA broadened the law to also allow for the rehabilitation of existing recreational facilities. The amendment made it clear that with respect to land for recreational use, rehabilitation could include replacement of playground equipment and other capital improvements to the land or the facilities thereon to make them more functional for their intended recreational use. So that's sort of a general statement that I picked up out of the consortium stuff,
Yeah,
which applies to both of these from rec, I think. In some
Correct.
cases.
agreed.
Thoughts on the baseball one?
No estimates yet? Did I miss that part?
They-
No,
they-
I don't have anything here. I see they have 25 as their
They're total,
total
right?
cost. So I've imagined they vetted this somewhere. I don't know with whom. That's all I know.
Requested amount from CPA fund matching funds if applicable.
You know, Tim, I didn't understand that when I filled out the application, what that really meant.
And it's same, that there were
Okay.
two places like almost right in a row to put the amount.
Oh, yeah. And they said the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
could, I mean, we'll scratch one of those. I was looking at that today and I said, that's redundant. We'll get rid of that.
Okay, okay,
I only
Right.
filled in one.
right. And so I know that the reason why they want to go to special town meeting is because their season starts. If they were to wait till annual town meeting, they'd already be in full swing with their season. So I'd say this is one that they don't want to wait until spring.
Right now?
I make a motion, we support it.
Oh, Eloise, you're so supportive.
Let's,
I love it.
do you mind holding that motion just so we go through the 5 and have a
Yeah.
sense as to whether we think, right now, we're trying to determine
Correct.
whether they're applicable. Is that all right, Eloise?
Of course.
Okay, so
Yep.
but people are comfortable that this one's applicable, right?
So I think I remember that it can be for recreational structures as long as they're not indoors structures. Is that the, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Has
you
to be
can't, you can't
Yeah, it can't
build,
be a gym
right,
or a
Right.
skating rink or
Right.
a
Or-
indoor pool.
or a turf soccer field. I mean, a
Yeah.
synthetic soccer field or whatever.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So our feeling is that this one is eligible.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think
Okay.
so.
100,000, Julie Lee, do you want to talk about the 100,000 for the courts?
Sure. Okay, so we have appealed, remember the wellness trail?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so because that didn't come to fruition because we were, our quotes were way over budget, that money was returned back to the culture mitigation fund. So I appealed to the select board to see if that could be returned back to rec. By Margaret's advice, she asked that we do it that way. She brought it up to the select board and they were in support of it coming back to us to help fund this project. So the whole project will be 150. They have to repair those courts. I don't know if anyone's been down there lately. They're a hazard at this point. I mean, you're looking at cracks that are like this, that have been sealed several times, but now it's just getting wider and wider. And now because they've been sealed, they just mound over. So it's an absolute liability actually, at this point. So we're just gonna redo the whole thing, but it's gotta be a whole total, reconstruction. So we're gonna do the 1 basketball court, the 2 tennis courts, and we're gonna put, 1, 2, 3, 4 pickleball courts on top of the tennis courts. Redo the fencing, so it doesn't look like, you know, prison down there. Looks a little bit nicer. So we're hoping for 30,000 to come back. That's in the works. 100 from CPA, and then 20 from free cash. That's the plan. That's the plan. Fingers crossed. And we do have a quote for this too. We've only received 1 quote so far. Actually, that's not true. He has 2 quotes, but 1 came significantly higher. So like you had said, same thing. This quote worked within our budget. So we'll just have to get that 3rd quote as well.
Yep.
That's it. That's all I have. It's going to be awesome.
Questions or comments on that one?
As the representative for rec, which Julie do you think is more needed by rec right now?
I think we can achieve both with what we have. I think it's important to nail both. I mean, the baseball program needs it for their spring season. The town needs the basketball one. I wouldn't necessarily look at which is needed more. I think they're both needed, period. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And people feel that this is eligible,
Yeah.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Carolyn,
Yes.
talk to us.
All right. So the corner of Lyman and Linden is 100 acres, give or take. It's we had a handshake deal with the property owners right before COVID. And we were going to, actually, had met with the select board about using a bunch of free cash. Everybody was on board. We were gonna start going forward with a warrant item, and then COVID happened. And so, obviously this fell off the priority list. And then when we got back in touch with the property owners, they weren't 100% sure that they were okay with the amount that we had agreed to verbally, because everyone's moving out to the country and maybe the property was going to be worth more. They also, prior to that, so part of the Conservation Commission / the town has a couple of things that make something like this a little bit tricky. One is that in order to apply for grants that would reimburse costs, so land grants generally reimburse 60 to 70% of the purchase price, but you have to have the money but not actually own the land. So you can't buy the land and then apply for the grant. So Sudbury Valley Trustees has helped us out a couple of times with stuff like this, where they buy the land, we apply for the grant. The last one we did was the Wendler property on Peach Hill Road. We did not get the grant. So we just paid Sudbury Valley Trustees the purchase price plus lawyer's fees and some stuff like that. The Mount Pisgah area has been a high priority for the state for 20 something years. It, I believe, still is and will be, especially with this last corner piece. The largest piece of intact habitat east of east of Worcester. I believe that's the case. It's a significant recreation area. It has become, certainly proven to become significant during COVID. It's quite heavily used now.
Yeah.
But it's also part of a larger, part of the larger Tri-Town initiative. It spills over into Northborough and Boylston. So it's a significant, it's the highest priority piece of land for conservation in town. But the property owners don't want to wait for contingencies like we need town meeting approval. They want basically for us to be able to give them a check. So Sudbury Valley trustees will again step in and be the intermediary in which Sudbury Valley trustees will buy the land from the current property owner, give us time to apply for grants, and if we need to break off, there's, according to the appraisal that we have, there's potentially 6 building lots along the street. But because nobody can get on the property to do perk tests, we don't know if there are truly 6 lots. There are almost surely 2 or 3. So if we need to raise money by by carving off a couple of house lots, we can do that as well. But the town can't do that. We can't do that once we own the land. So Sudbury Valley trustees would then do that as well. My understanding is that we will probably end up paying more for this property than it's appraised for, but we can only, CPA funds can only go for the appraised value. So what we are asking for is half of the appraised value now. And if we are able to get that, Sudbury Valley trustees will feel confident in, their board of directors will feel confident in going ahead with such a large investment, feeling that we have the support of the town to go through the rest, to buy the rest of the property. But without any support from the town at all, they're a little leery of putting out that much money ahead of time. And does all that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. I would say that most people in this town probably think that's already conservation land. How heavily it's used by mountain bikers and hikers and people who park all over that property.
Yep.
That I think when you go to town and explain what this property is, probably half are going to think it's already conservation land there.
So will that put the fear of God in them to make them want to purchase it and protect it because they realize it's vulnerable, or will that make them lackadaisical and say, who cares?
I think it's a very desirable piece of property that would sell in a minute if the owners put it on the open market.
Yeah.
I do like that conservation has talked about selling off 2 lots to help with the purchase of it, which shows they have some flexibility and they're not just wanting to save it all. But I do feel like,
well, we'd like to, but we're also realistic.
I think this one has a strict timeline because if at any moment that sign goes up, it's really too late at that point. So
Yeah.
Right. We have 120 days. We do have right of first refusal. So we have 120 days, but 120 days to pull together that amount of money, it just isn't realistic. That's why there was some discussion amongst Conservation Commission members about whether we should ask for the whole thing using estimated future funds, and I didn't feel comfortable with that. Which is why I wanted to ask for half of it now and half of it in the spring. I think we do have a little bit of time, but I don't think it, as like James said, I mean, it's a gamble
Right.
asking for half of it now. But the reality is we don't have the money anyway, so. But we will have 120 days if they decide, if they get an offer on the land to purchase it.
And I'd hope that between selling off 2 lots and hopefully grants from the state, that the actual taxpayer amount spending in the end won't be as great as it looks of a purchase price. Because if you take 1.2 and then you minus off whatever you get for the 2 lots, and then if we get a large grant from the state, because this is a priority 1, then we're not paying close to the actual purchase price of this property. Is that correct from conservation?
That is correct, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
Now-
I don't know at all how it works, but it seems like that would be the plan on that property in order to get, 90 acres at a very, very reasonable price in the end.
So the first question is, we all agree that it's an eligible use of the funds, right? No
Yeah.
one's
Yeah.
questioning that. You've been generally successful over the years in acquiring some matching money from the state for land purchases. Not so much recently, or is only Wendler the only case that you've failed?
Wendler's the only case, and part of the reason Ashley Davies was with SVT at the time, and part of the reason she thought that maybe we didn't get that is because we had just gotten a land grant the prior year for Great Oak Farm.
Yeah.
So it's now been a couple of years since we've applied for any land grants. There are also MVP grants now, which is Municipal Vulnerability Program.
Yeah.
This land has been flagged as MVP important. So, and the MVP programs are actually paying out more money than land grants. So the strategy will be that we will apply for both. You hear back from the MVP program before the land grant program. So if we're awarded an MVP grant, then we would pull the land grant application. But if we didn't get the MVP grant, then we would still have the land grant in the works.
Does it benefit that this is a larger piece than the Wendler piece? I believe the Wendler one was 20 or 30 acres, where this one will be 80 to 90. Does that come into effect with the
Right,
state?
this one's actually closer to 100 if you count the little piece of really, really totally wet land across the street.
Oh, right. Yep.
It probably does, especially where it is part of the larger Mount Pisgah Tri-Town area. It is environmentally more important and recreationally more important than the Wendler piece, for sure.
Questions? Everybody's all set? So that's the 5.
And I do just also want to say, I do know, I recognize that it seems audacious to be asking for all of this money the first time around. I really do. If we could wait a little longer, I would absolutely do that. But we have been working on this for a couple of years, and I just want everybody to know I understand how it looks. And this is not a pattern you can expect from conservation for every town meeting, except for the next
next-
one.
Just the next
Yeah.
two.
Yeah, the next two. So I do just want to say that.
That's great.
It will set a precedent.
Not as long as I'm chair.
Well, that could
Yeah.
change.
That could
Well,
change.
that could change, but given the current makeup of the commission, sadly, I think I'm stuck with the job for quite a while. So I could get hit by a bus. You never know.
Jeez, jeez.
Okay. Any other general comments on procedure process? How do people feel? Do you comfortable?
Yeah, I feel totally comfortable. I'm gonna go back to the accounting piece. And I know this has nothing to do with the applications, but just so we can just keep that live, some sort of live document. You know what I mean?
Say that again?
Yep. So the applications, yeah, I agree with all of that. The fact that they're all eligible and ones that can't wait till spring. I just think we have to, the accounting piece for the funds has to be, I don't know the best way to say this, has to be live, has to be accessible. You know I said that last meeting, but I think that's super, super important, even as we start to go through these applications.
So in the case of the Historic Commission, they've got figures and bids for these projects.
Correct. Yes.
And REC is saying that they're confident about the 100,000. They're not sure where the 20 comes from, but you assume that there's some evidence that the project could be, I mean, one of the things you don't want to do, again, on the
I
REC
know.
part, is ask
Right.
for a sum of money and then find that it wasn't enough and you can't do it, because you
Right.
burn your bridges pretty fast. So
Sure.
20,000 is 20,000, and we've got to make a decision as to whether or not to put this on the warrant. So, and write something up between, now and Monday. So that's the question I think we have to ask ourselves.
So these would be looped together?
No, they'd be separate.
Okay.
I would argue they're separate because they're
Yeah, agree.
they're bid differently and
Mhm.
but you don't, I mean, there's no bids been requested for that $25,000 project probably.
No, that's basically based, that's basically based on, there's guys in the community that do this kind of work for,
Yeah,
that's their company, you know what I mean? So that was their guesstimate when they got
Right.
together. You know what I mean? But as far as a bid, no. But if that's separate anyways, that wouldn't fall, we wouldn't look, rec wouldn't take the hit on that.
well, it's coming out of the rec conservation
Right.
pot of money, so, would be reflective.
Sure.
But for the 150, you've got good solid, you've got one, what'd you say? You had two bids and one was way
Yeah.
off the scale, so, but
Correct.
you've got data that says we do this project. Redo the basketball, tennis courts and add the pickle courts, and we could do that for that sum.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, and then you've got an appraisal on the property from conservation for the site, and that was 980, huh? Is that?
It was 980, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been doing some math. we're about $22,000 over, so I would be willing to amend the amount of money that we're asking for so that we can come in under budget. Oh, actually, I think that was,
Are you sure?
no, that was with Elaine's 100,000 that now is out. I think anyway, whatever we end up with the math, I am willing to amend the amount of money so that it all works.
And will Sudbury Valley be okay if we're getting a third of it instead of half of it up front?
Right,
or-
well, I think even if we amend it to 450, I think that still shows enough support. If I don't have to amend it, if I did my math wrong, I'd rather not. But I think what really is gonna matter is whether there's support. Mostly, partly from this committee, to use CPA funds for this purchase.
So in essence, you're saying to us, are we committed to the expenditure of 490 now and 490 in May? In
Right,
addition-
or 460 now and 520 in the spring.
So $1 million,
That's what 480 comes out to.
right?
Yeah,
So,
that'll jeopardize the
980.
100,000. That'll jeopardize what we're looking for in the spring.
Won't we
It
have more money in
shouldn't.
the spring?
well, let me
That's the
ask
idea.
again.
Okay,
If we think that we've got, I keep putting pieces of paper down here.
Mhm.
I know I've got like 17 windows open in my computer right now.
Excuse me, Carolyn, how much
Yeah?
is the total project?
The total appraised value right now is $980,000.
And you're saying that CPA language says that land acquisitions can't exceed the appraised value using CPA funds. So you'd have to
Correct.
come up with additional money
Elsewhere,
elsewhere.
correct, which we
Could
are.
I ask James Holyoke, assuming that there's 2 house lots, roughly what does a house lot go for in Berlin? Please lowball it a little bit.
Lowballing it, 25 in that area.
A house lot is worth 25,000?
225, 225.
Okay.
Lowballing it.
I was gonna say, geez, I'll buy one.
I'll take 2.
Yeah. So 450
would-
for
that
2 house
goes with-
lots.
Well, it depends. How it's split up, how the perk rates go. If you have a good one at the back in the Pines, you could go up to 275 at that point, but low.
Yeah, well, I don't wanna be mystical. I wanna be, realistic here.
Okay, lowballing it, we're gonna say lowball guaranteed, you're getting 450 for 2 lots.
Okay,
That's the lowball. One's up on Sawyer Hill, we're going for about 275. There's been other ones around town going to 275. We've had, 3,000 square foot homes newly built now going over $1 million. And they're vinyl, 2-car garage. So lots are doing just fine. We'd have no problem.
well, I'm just trying to work out my math. If the total project is 980,000 and a conservative 2 house lots is 450, that means we only have to come up with 530,000 total? Or did I miss something?
Great.
Possibly, and again, this is where it becomes who's paying Peter, who's paying Paul, how does all of that, but ultimately, yes, you're right, Eloise.
Hmm.
But also,
But
they're going to want more than 980. What you're saying.
oh, almost surely. The purchase price will be more than the 980. Almost surely. Plus
That
you've got
appraisal is-
lawyers and all the other people that need to get paid.
Yep. But I would take that out of the administrative. I'm just thinking, you said the landowner wanted you to give them a check or two. So,
Right. And,
I-
and that will be the 1 point whatever we end up at. So Sudbury Valley trustees will purchase the land from the property owner for the full amount of money,
which is,
which is at 1 point something. We haven't,
okay,
we don't have a number yet from them.
okay.
But CPA funds we can only ask for the appraised value.
So
So-
Sudbury Valley would only sell us the appraised value worth of land and they would keep the rest?
No, we're gonna have to come up with the money from other sources, the balance of the money from other sources, which is why we're only asking for the appraised value from CPA.
Okay,
That's part of where the 2 lots would come in then, is if they're asking for or if it's appraised at 980 and they're wanting 1.3, then the 2 lots are,
450,000.
Right, and their assurance that we can have that they give us a cushion.
Okay, all I'm trying to think of is, as soon as the town puts up the 490,000, then Sudbury Valley would buy it minus our 480, and or right before, then you would apply for a state grant before we actually bought it?
Correct. We cannot purchase it and then apply for a grant.
Well, if it's voted November 8th, the next day, can you apply for a grant?
No, I believe the grant cycle, I believe it starts in February. February or March is when we.
And how long does it take to go through?
It can take, that I don't know on the MVP grants. I know the land grants are usually awarded in the fall.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to think of a way to, I know it's a valuable piece of property. I'm just trying to figure out a way that we don't spend all of our money and yet we can acquire what we need.
I agree. Believe me, this has been how I've spent a lot of the last 2 years.
Right.
Trying to figure out, because especially because the property owners don't want to be involved in the machinations of how do we come up with the money. They
Yep.
just want to check.
Right.
So we're trying to, and at first Sudbury Valley trustees wasn't really eager to put that kind of money out without a vote at town meeting, without any sort of assurance that they would get their money back.
Well, then they'd
Um,
sell 10 house lots.
Yeah, but that's not their charter. They're a land trust. They conserve land. So they would not become the developer. So their board, through Krista Collins, who we've been working with, has said, if we can, if we as the town can show them as the board that we are willing to put up,
I know, we
Yeah.
show good faith.
we show good faith, exactly.
Anyway. And Lane, in regard to your question, in this impacting your ability to pull the 100 next year, you've got 77,000 in the historic resource right now. And you're gonna add at least 50,000 at the next town meeting, which would mean you'd end up with about 125 if you use 5 right now for the document copying. You in the historic fund alone, you're going to have more than the 100,000, the way I interpret it. So does that give you a comfort level, or?
Well, it just seems like we're spending the whole pot right off the bat. I don't know how the town's gonna see that.
Well, that's the question we have to ask ourselves. You know, I think James' comment earlier was elusive a little bit. Did James, do you feel that support of the town is there for land acquisition? I mean, if we look historically, the town has expended money that it got from mitigation for open space, but very rarely has it never, hardly ever raises and appropriates. Now, in this case, it's raised and appropriated the fee part of this through a decision made several years ago that puts money into conservation. And it's clear from the language in the text of CPA that some of that's earmarked for open space. So you'd argue probably that the town knew what it was getting into when it voted to support CPA in the first place.
Right.
You could also argue that it supported CPA because it felt that money was going to go to areas other than conservation and the acquisition of open space. And that there are times when people feel, you know, uh-oh, you know, here we go again, we're spending more money on open space. But if we look historically at the surveys that the planning board has done when we've done master plan work, there's always this high priority for the protection of open space and the protection of rural character. And when you ask the question, are you willing to raise your taxes to acquire land, it's usually no, you know. But in this case, with CPA and the support for CPA, they must have understood to some degree that the money was going to go in that direction. You know, you don't want to be in a situation several years from now where people have a backlash feeling towards CPA and want to see the number of the percentage reduced, you know, to go to town meeting and say, we're not going to have 3% anymore. We want to go down to 1% like so many other towns are. And as Stuart pointed out to us, we're one of the few towns in the last decade that's gone to 3%. So we were fortunate to get there. And I think people might very well buy the argument that by being here, and if this year we're matched by 75% from the state, that's a significant contribution from the state that not all the towns around us are getting. So, I mean, Hudson's at 1%, so Marlboro isn't even in it.
I think if you asked anybody in town what the most important piece of land there is to conserve, I think there would be a unanimous decision that this is the spot. Now, I understand about spending the money all at once right away, but this property might not be around in 5 years when we say, okay, now we can spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the time to do it, because once it's gone, it's gone. And if we're saying this is the most important piece we need, then this is the time to act now, because it may be too late. This could be like the South Street project, where we wanted more time. You know, Mark Rhodes ended up buying it, and then everybody said, oh, I wish we had that. Wish we could have bought that. And we had the chance. We had the chance to do it, and we wanted more time, and it went. So sometimes when it's something that we're all agreeing is the most important piece of land to conserve, you have to act when it's in front of you.
Any other general conversation, or do we want to go ahead and make some motions to either support or not support some of these for placement on the warrant. You comfortable with moving forward? All right. Eloise, you were eager to make motions. You want to make your motion again?
Okay, I make a motion, we support all the articles presented tonight.
Whew.
It's
Love it.
after 9. My hours are over, sir.
Would that include, we would be trying to put forward both historical ones now? Or are we passing on the Fuller House one?
Eloise,
don't-
would,
Right.
I
Eloise, would
don't
you?
see any advantage. It's not gonna get younger.
I know.
They don't repair itself. And it doesn't mean it would be spent November 8th. They're already doing their other stuff on the sills. And then once that's done, I assume they would segue into doing these other jobs.
Wait, can I just go back to the finance part piece? So I'm sorry, I just don't think the money's there for all of it.
Right,
So-
I agree.
So look, if everyone sees this in front of you, the thing June sent out, the 6/30/2021, right? The first column, do people have that in front of them or no?
And what do you see as the bottom line,
All right, so everyone at the 10% is 77,000 roughly,
right?
right? So now you move to FY 22 town meeting. That money's not available unless we do what Eloise said, you know, in that month's time. That 48,000 isn't available until at least June 2022, right?
No, that money is available mid-November when CPA funds this year. We will know the week after town meeting how much money we're getting from the
So you're-
state for this year.
For special town meeting.
Correct. Special town meeting is November 8th. CPA
Right.
gets funded November 15th.
Okay. Okay, so then we do have that. So then that 125 is actually accurate for November 15th. For the 10% for those three categories.
The 48,000, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, is the estimate that we did at town meeting for funds that we will get this year.
That's right.
We will
You
probably
mean
get
by
more.
this-
So we really have, right now, we each have 77,000 and change, whatever that was.
Yep. And then come November 15th, we add the 48,000, which will bring us to the 125.
Plus
I know
whatever,
it's
yes, at minimum, yes.
Okay, so that money for these projects will still be available come January 1st to begin work. Right? I
Which
think
money?
that's right. The
Oh,
120
I see what you're saying. After CPA gets funded, but
Right.
if we're not approving based on the estimate, then the projects are not, the 125 isn't available, the 77 is.
that's what I'm saying. Is that 48,000 available come November 15th? Or is that 48,000 available after
Spring,
annual town meeting? Right, it is spring.
yes.
Okay, so if that's the case, then these figures, we need to be looking at the left column, which is significantly different than the 125, because now we're looking at 77,000 per each group. So for historic, if you were to go ahead right now, you know, you'd still be fine because you're looking at 50 and 5, so that's 55, right? Did I get that right?
No, it was originally it was 100,005.
Okay, so that's questionable. That's no. Recreation also is no. So we say, okay, those two amounts are no, so we have to dip into the big pot. But the big pot's only 528, right? And if conservation secures
And
490,
but of the 528, you have to take out the affordable housing portion because that's not in play anywhere.
sorry, I'm sorry, the 761, I'm sorry. I know, we're just throwing around these figures, and if you don't have them in front of you, it's very confusing.
I know, I'm gonna open it again.
But the bottom line is for open space and rec, the 10% that's available right now is 77,000. That doesn't meet what we're asking for, or baseball too. So then we'd have to dip into the big one. Same thing for historic, you'd be dipping into the big one for this annual town meeting. And then money's not there. It's just not there. Right?
I mean, it's gonna have to be a compromise somewhere where maybe conservation goes a little bit lower on theirs, and then we push off maybe one of the, I hate to say this, but one of the rec things, Julie, can we push off one like a year later and everybody compromises on that way? And I don't know if historical can lower theirs and we do 75 instead of 100, and then would everybody be happy if we everybody gives in a little and we can get them all on?
I think what we need June here. I think we need,
Right,
I
so,
think we need, I think we have to make sense of these numbers and try to make all these projects work if we can with the money that's there.
And then
Okay,
give the
so-
taxpayer- and then give the voters the question.
Right, it's up to the voters.
Let
Right.
the voters, get them all in, somehow negotiate it, everybody gives in a little, and then let the voters decide on what they want to do, because
Yep.
in the
Right.
end, it's their money, so.
so if you take the 761,000 and you subtract the 77,000 from affordable housing, you come up with 683,691. So that's the general fund, all
Yeah.
of historical, and all of open space. So, By my calculation.
No. Isn't that the
that's-
general fund? Isn't that the general fund with what's awarded for FY '22?
No, because if you take,
No?
but if you take 528, so
Yeah.
I'm still just in the first column,
Yep,
6/31/2021. 528, 723, 38, plus 77,483, 73, plus 77,483, 73.
yeah, it's 232,000. For all
What?
10%. For all 10% of
No,
those.
no, no, no.
No.
We're
yeah,
taking the 2 of the 10%
Yep,
and the general fund. Because affordable housing
That gives you the
isn't,
760.
that gives you 683,69, 690,000, right here, right? That right there. It's backwards. $683,690. So that is all open space as of the end of June 2021, all historical, and all of the main fund.
okay.
Because we're not touching affordable, so we have to take that out.
I see what you're saying, yep.
Because
I-
if you,
I was just gonna say, I think if my math's right, Carolyn, if you just drop yours to 450, I think then it all fits.
yeah,
the
I agree.
On the back end. Right.
Okay,
Yeah, because all 5 proposals come to $705,000.
okay. Perfect.
So what we did at town meeting was place the 48,000 in each of the 3 accounts. And then we placed an amount into the budgeted reserve of 325,000. So I guess my question to June is, any of the money in the budgeted reserve or the specific accounts, which to me is the 48 plus the money from before, which is the 77, the money from 2020, is actually, in my mind, what's available. that's there. And then the question is, how much can we play with that's money that we've got from the fiscal year we're in now? So one option is to write up the articles, put them on give them to the selectmen on Monday. And I chased down June immediately on Monday and get her to come to our next meeting, which we could schedule in fairly short order if we wanted, and have her review in her mind what is actually available for expenditure. And then make some changes to the dollar amounts in those articles that we present to the selectmen, because they'll allow that kind of latitude, I would think. There's no harm in that.
Right.
Because they're not going to publish the warrant and finalize it for a bit. They've got to go to town council and all that stuff.
Great.
May I suggest for the next meeting, we have a chart of available funds as of that night?
Mhm.
Yeah, because we keep looking at these numbers, and the fund balance was the 528, 723,
Mhm.
but it was the 325 that actually got put into the budget reserve. And
According to my proceedings, it was 315,
Right, that's what this number is.
or I could have done
And
a
we put 20
typo.
yeah, you may be right. But anyway, it's not the 528. It's a,
Right.
Right, because I believe the 528, the balance, the difference between the 528 and the 315 is what we had collected the prior year, the year that we
Correct.
didn't get, right. So the 528 is accurate.
but it's not money that's been put into budgeted reserve. So the question I
No,
have
no,
is-
no. I don't think that's true, because the first year, June was able to put that into budgeted reserve without us voting for it.
Yeah, just the first year that the accountant is allowed.
any money that's put into budgeted reserve that isn't earmarked for something the next year goes back into the general.
Correct.
Right. Correct.
So if she put it in, it wouldn't stay there unless we voted, and we only voted the 3 whatever, right?
Hmm.
Well, that's what the other ledger is. She's carrying that money
Right.
Yep.
in the administrative that we set aside, the administrative expenses we set aside, and the budgeted reserve. And those are the two numbers on the spreadsheet. But it's the ledger. You got the ledger also, right?
Yep.
So those are the ones that she actually held aside. That's the 339.
339,266 is the 315 and the 24.
Yep.
Right.
So that's what we voted on at town meeting last year. And the 24,000, if we don't spend it, will go back into that general account.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Right, so what we don't have here is the numbers from the first year
Mhm.
Right.
to know if the 528 includes, is that 315,000 or 339,000?
Well, we had two articles that concerned community preservation. First one was Article 4, and we voted $48,793.30 to each of the three reserves.
Right.
And then we had Article 17. And that had $48,466.70 to each of the reserves. But it also had the appropriations, and Article 4 there did not have the appropriation.
Well, and 17 had the 24 for administrative and
Correct.
the 315 for,
Right, because the
Yes.
first one was for the
General
prior
reserve.
year for money that we actually had. And the second one was the estimated for the current year.
right.
And I believe what we've all decided is that we're not going to spend any of the estimated funds.
I agree.
Yeah, we seem to be in general agreement about that. So. I
So
can
we still
certainly-
don't know how much we have to spend.
No, but I mean, I can certainly write up each of these with the dollar amount that's been requested and say to the selectmen, here are 5 articles. And then we can check with June and determine exactly how much we feel we're comfortable with and look for some modifications if it's needed to make some adjustments.
Sounds like a plan.
So
And
Tim,
So Eloise has made a motion to approve all of these, and did anyone second that?
I'll
Second
second.
And is there any further discussion on any of that? And we'll take a roll call vote.
Should the motion include the possibility of amending the dollar amounts?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That a friendly amendment you'll accept, Eloise?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, so that's the line essentially. And we'll take a roll call on this. Carolyn
Aye.
and Julie,
aye.
MJ
I,
and Elaine
Aye.
and Eloise
Aye.
and James
Aye.
and Tim, I'm gonna vote no
Okay.
at this time.
Do you
I may
care
be,
to elaborate?
I'm
He's playing devil's advocate.
yeah, I think we may be walking out onto the plank here, but you know, I think if I can be comfortable with what June gives me, and I'm also not complete, I mean, we made this as a statement about all 5 of these. So if we're voting on all 5, I mean, I have concerns about the 20,000 for rec because I don't know where the figures are, and I
Right.
don't
but
want to go to
we're still
town
at the
meeting.
pre-application phase, so I don't think we can really hold it against them for not having figures that we
No, but I mean,
haven't asked for yet.
we're in a pickle. as
We're
far
in
as
a
I'm concerned.
crunch,
Yeah.
What?
but it's the first time, so
It's
I
the first time,
decided
that's
to let
right.
it roll.
So-
Also, if we're headed down a plank, I think we have enough administrative funds to afford some cutlasses to fight, to piracy action. And I bet you no one else at town meeting is gonna have, swords if we do that, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll be in good shape.
that's okay. We're ready for them.
So,
Do you want to have a meeting next week?
yes,
Yeah.
if people can make it.
Okay, what days?
Well, we like Wednesdays. Right, MJ? Or is that
I-
still? the
If I
case?
can, so I'm back at work tonight because the coworker who was gone for 2 weeks, then last Tuesday had a seizure right here. So hopefully he'll be back like really, really soon because he's fine now, but we've needed a
Okay.
doctor out and detached and now the doctor. And so I'm on
Wednesday-
day,
Wednesday is the
Well-
best night for you, though?
yeah.
Right.
It is the best of at the moment. No, good
Okay.
nights, but
And so in general, Wednesday's good for people?
No,
Yes.
Yeah.
not really.
Oh.
He's working.
Right.
This one won't be as long.
Yeah.
Can I get that in writing?
Yep,
Yeah, yeah, well, it's a fifth Wednesday this month, so I do not have conservation, so I can make Wednesday.
good. Okay,
Okay.
so I'll put some articles together, motions, I mean, for warrant articles, and then I'll circulate those to everybody so you get a chance to say, what the hell is he talking about? And then we'll get those to the selectmen for Monday. We'll chase June and ask her to attend the meeting on Wednesday. And Eloise is gonna help me get that posted, and I'll request a Zoom link from Mary tomorrow.
Okay, how about the agenda will be final review of special town meeting articles?
Yeah,
Okay,
7:30?
I have a
was gonna-
question.
go ahead.
Who were the other participants in our meeting? There were nine.
Mark,
There were
it
not-
must have, if it said
We had-
Mark Adams, it was
well-
probably Janet Campbell.
No,
No.
isn't Mark
I
Adams
bet it was
on
Mark.
rec?
No, that's
was
Mark
Mark.
Adams Rec. I was
Right.
thinking of
Yeah.
Mark.
And Trudy Turbo is still
yeah,
in the
she
audience.
called me, she was interested. She just wanted to get a handle on how to get to the meeting. And then if we bring up housing partnership comments.
Good,
So Tim, should people then start preparing the applications?
yes.
Okay.
We need to, does rec have to get the scoreboard quote by next week? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, but that's not, I'd imagine that's not gonna be too difficult. There's enough. I'd imagine, look at me, I'd imagine it's not gonna be difficult. I have no idea. I'm saying that.
Well,
I think,
we still-
I think that baseball's gotta understand, they're under the gun here, right? We're all a little bit under the gun, so.
Well,
Right,
you still have
it-
a couple weeks to withdraw it if one of these applications or more than one don't have their ducks in a row. So I think
Right.
it's,
Right,
But are the applications due next week? Is that what you're asking,
Well,
James?
that's what I'm asking, like, do we
Okay.
need everything? We gave whatever the deadline was, Monday or something, and we're kind of giving that extra time because of this year, nobody kind of knows what's going on and we're getting these
Yeah.
late applications. So is that the hard deadline? Is it next week or is there another
Well,
hard deadline?
the situation is that the Historic Commission has some hard figures for the proposals they have. Conservation has some hard figures, and Rec has hard figures except for the 20,000. So everybody in my mind is partway there to being able to put together their final application because they've got some accurate numbers. So I think, although, I mean, 20,000, it seems like you ought to be able to come up with some realistic numbers from some
Right.
verifiable vendors that are gonna, back you up. So,
Mhm. Okay.
So,
So, but,
at our-
sorry, Carolyn, just to clarify, applications are not due Wednesday.
no,
Okay.
but
So when are they?
pretty, I mean, if
what
you
about
look
the
at,
6th, two weeks from today? That would give us them, 2 weeks, and that would give us a month
Okay.
before the meeting to withdraw if,
well, yeah, but I mean, ideally, we'd want to withdraw before the warrant was published.
Print,
And,
right.
so that doesn't even get to the light of day if it's not gonna float.
yeah, but
Um,
wouldn't like October 6th be soon enough to do that if the
That-
meeting
that
is
is-
in November?
Yep, because we'd be able to pull it later that week, and
Right.
I don't think the selectmen would have finalized things enough to go to print, so,
right, so
Okay.
I can't meet on the 6th or the 7th,
okay.
just so we know. At our last meeting, it was mentioned that I don't know if everybody, I don't know if it was based on dollar amount, but that capital planning should also be, an application to capital planning should also happen.
Yes.
So I've done that for ours.
Good.
but I wasn't sure, is their threshold usually is $10,000. So does that mean the $200,000 projects should also do that?
Yeah, and even if
And-
they say, I just think that the notion of going before them and getting their attention, even if they say, this is fine, you don't need to come to us, it's still a good practice to go to them with any of these big dollar amounts that are going to be expended. Because if you can imagine in the future, times in which there's going to be multiple funding sources for some of these projects, and if everything ought to go in front of capital planning in my mind, even if they don't throw it on their chart. Because there are going to be a lot of situations where it's going to be multiple funding sources probably.
But even for this one, we go to them to request money.
No, you're going to fill out the application in my mind. So it's a heads up to them that there's money going to come out of CPA, which again, they may very well want to speak up at town meeting and say they think it's a great idea because it matches up with some long-range plans for the town and alleviates the need to expend some capital money
Okay,
from some other sources. So
okay,
it just keeps them in the loop, and because they have that formal, it's a fairly simple application in my
Yeah.
mind. It's just a good practice. If we can keep on good accord with them, it'd probably be to our benefit all along.
okay.
Because in a number of cases, I think we really will be working hand in hand with them on some projects where, you know, they want to take money out of a certain fund and we're going to take CPA money and.
Right,
match
the
what-
one thing that we do need to be careful of is one of the things that disqualifies a project from CPA is using CPA money in lieu of town funds.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't supplant them.
Right.
In the interest of candor, I am also a member of the capital planning group.
Okay,
All
I had
right.
nothing to do on Thursday nights.
So you'd argue it's a good practice, Eloise, for us to,
I think it's a good practice to always include like the finance committee, capital planning,
yeah.
Okay.
town administrator. I mean, it just helps them to let them know what's down the road.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, and like Eloise was saying, no supplanting of general municipal revenue, no maintenance or operation expenses, recreation outdoor projects only. Land purchases must file a permanent restriction with the state held by a third party, and projects may not be voted on by the legislative body unless CPAC has first issued a positive recommendation. So,
And I just posted the meeting for next week,
thank you.
minus the Zoom instructions.
I'll get that and include it.
Okay, thank you.
all right, awesome.
A motion to adjourn
So move.
No move, yeah.
Second,
and a roll call vote. Carolyn,
I,
Julie,
Aye.
MJ,
aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
James,
I
Eloise,
Aye.
I, Tim. All right.